Hello, I'm Sue Connolly,
And I'm Kelly Connolly.
and we're sisters. And we also moderate the Kit List, a community of 72,000 job seekers, recruiters, and employers. And we are really, really lucky today in our Corona video number 5.
And this is our seventh week for all of us.
And I've got her as my roommate. She's staying with me, and which has been really great. And with that, that's why we've been able to do these videos together. And more importantly, we have really a very well-respected speaker, executive coach, and author, Ash Sadiq, who co-wrote a book with Jack Canfield called The Road to Success. And he also is one of the founders of the Executive Greatness Institute, where he coaches and advises executives in the Silicon Valley's top companies to have them deliver amazing keynotes, really nail down their messages, and inspire their audiences.
Ash also helps to lead companies like Cisco, Uber, Adobe, Square to help leaders to develop their story, their personal brand. And this is why we're having Ash come today to help us as we are looking for new jobs, looking for career changes, and maybe starting new businesses. But how do we actually answer that question when people ask, what do you do? Do we have that story ready? So this is what Ash does, and Ash, we are ready to hear this because walk us through how the steps to make a great story for professionally.
And especially now with this pandemic, people are on Zoom with friends, family, colleagues, and we all assume that people know what we do, but actually many times they don't. And your own personal network is your first place to start with the people who are most likely to be able to help you find your next job, consulting opportunity, or to help launch your business. So having that light bulb moment of like, oh, that's what you do, and seeing the value of it, and then helping them to make that connection to, oh, I know so and so at such and such. That's when the magic begins. So, Ash, if you could just tell us, how do you take this success blueprint that you've been so effective in teaching the executives here in the Valley and beyond to apply for job seekers and consultants and new business owners?
And you have to make it a good story for all of us to tell, to make it interesting and easy for those to understand what we do.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Sue and Kelly. It's definitely, as you're saying, the environment we are in really calls for a whole different energy. And I think when you think about the majority of people working from home today, whether they are individual contributors, managers, or executives in companies, and even individuals who are looking now for work, or have their own businesses, and they are thinking, how am I going to be able to articulate my value? So, as we have spoken, the main thing that I think people will take away from this conversation is the fact that whenever they have any of these conversations, whether over email or in person, they will just bring a whole different energy to those conversations. So what I actually end up really sharing with them, especially now, people need to get very good with their messaging, with articulating their value. And that's why what we have for them today is a model that will really help them articulate those things. So we call it we give them 3 main points. We call them the 3 M's. And that's essentially the mindset that they are bringing to the table, the message that they articulate about what they do and what value they bring to the table, and the multiplier effects. So those would be the things that we will kind of spill out in detail, if you will.
Well, and also I want to say at this point too, Ash has been very generous in offering to give people who are on the Kit List or who are listening to this on YouTube a 3-hour consultation to be able to help people craft what their key message is. And there's actually a formula that Ash will be sharing and giving us some examples. But we all know it's easy to do it for other people and really hard to do it for ourselves. In the meantime, Ash, why don't you go ahead and share how you help executives and now how job seekers and consultants can do this as well.
Absolutely. So when we think about mindset, that's really what I want to share with everybody, a success blueprint that really came together for me. And as you mentioned, I published it in the book with Jack Canfield. And it really came as a result of my work for Deloitte & Touche. On the first day of the job, my boss said to me, Ash, don't come to the office. I want you to get on an airplane and go to South California, to Monrovia, and work with our first client, Kaiser Permanente. And she said, remember when you get there, everybody around you is your client. And that was a head scratcher for me because I used to work at Charles Schwab, and Never really thought of people working around me as my clients. But this was an interesting concept. And since that day, I have become very conscious of the brand that I represent. And of course, now, whether you're working full-time, part-time, or you're consulting and have your own business, or looking for a job at the same time, now we need to think about what is that brand that you want to represent. And the success blueprint is called Own It, Win It, Crush It. And it starts with owning it. And that's the mindset piece that I was saying, because with owning it, it basically, in a nutshell, it summarizes the mindset into three key components. Number one is having a responsible mindset, which means every single day, wait for anybody to get us going. We have to be self-directed and get that energy going every single day. And we also have to be people who think in the abundance of the universe. No matter how bad things might look, there is always an opportunity. And we just need to have that as a belief system that, as saying, for every bear market story, there's a bull story. So right now we do know, even though we're staying at home, there are a lot of businesses that are making millions of dollars in this situation. And what we need to start thinking about is how can we actually tap into some of those value chains that are taking place, some of these opportunities that are taking place. And then the third piece of that mindset is to be very consultative in our approach, be open-minded to different approaches and not sit in our ways. Sometimes when we're working full-time and we have a particular way of doing things, that's how we do things. But in this world, when we're trying to be much more consultative, we need to come from the standpoint of, there's an unlimited potential and ideas for how things get done.
The thing I really appreciated about what you take the approach, which for me as a marketing person, I value, is that you say, get to the key of how you solve the problem with someone. That's part of that consultative approach where it's not just saying, I do this and this and this. It's more like, I help companies solve this problem. And that's where that light bulb goes off and people go, oh, I need that too. And in fact, Ash, you mentioned about, and I don't know if you want to talk about this later, but how you craft this message about yourself is what actually helps other people know how to recommend you later on. Because when someone hears about a need, if they know what you do, then all of a sudden you start getting those referrals. And someone says, hey, Ash is the one that we bring in.
And also, as you make it a dialogue of your personal story, it becomes more personal, and people can then relate better to you as a person, and then in turn think about you for other positions, jobs, or opportunities. So you help us with this sort of blueprint dialogue, if we can.
Absolutely. And what we have for people, we actually have a script, and I love it because it starts with, do you know how? Do you know how companies, for example, if somebody is a product manager and now he's out of a job or she's out of a job and she's trying to get a job, and we basically give them this script in order for them to have a conversation, as you were saying, Kelly, that people will remember. So we start with the phrase, do you know how? Do you know how companies sometimes struggle with getting a product out to market on time and on budget? That's where I come in. I have built many years of experience helping companies launch products that are absolutely right on in terms of customer fit. They achieve the revenue targets that they are looking for. And that's where my expertise really resides. And then we also talk about why we actually believe in this kind of business. We throw in the phrase, the reason why I love this kind of work is because we believe there are usually people that are waiting for this product. They are waiting for it. And it's going to make a difference in their lives. And that's why I every day make sure I get better and better at product management. And that's what kind of leads me to ask you, do you know any companies that are now struggling to get the product out to market that I could talk to? And to your point, Kelly, that's really where there is a nice pivot to, now that I told you what I do, I give you a sense of that situation where I step in and make a difference. And then I start to ask for referrals and ask them to think of companies or individuals that I can actually start to engage with and talk to them about what I could bring to the table.
It's a nice flow too. You're talking about a little bit of introduction about yourself, what you do now, and how you, and also identifying an issue for this potential company or client that they identify with. And then as you you keep it flowing, and then you bring it into, how can I help you?
And also, in our kind of the prep work we were all doing together, you mentioned about what your sweet spot was, working with executives and coaching them. And actually, you're having to work with executives who don't necessarily feel comfortable in front of an audience, or they have to lead teams or have to lead them in difficult times. So I also like how you talk about is like, calling out what your sweet spot is, because all of a sudden that becomes like a mental hook in someone's brain, and they're going to remember like, oh, sweet spot. And then also, if someone, when you say the types of companies I've worked with are X, Y, and Z, being specific, you can say, companies like you say, like I was a Cisco and Adobe and Uber and Square, and companies that are really trying to propel their executives forward, or, that gives people another hook, like, oh, okay, those companies, that size. Because one of the things I've heard is that if people are too general about what they do, people go like, oh, okay, great, and they need to help, but then it doesn't stick in their mind. So you're helping them to come up with the things that are, what are those, like that stickiness that people are going to remember, like, oh, that's what I need to call Ash.
Well, you're calling it the multiplier effect. There is a formula here that's easy, really. Once you have this verbiage down, it really absorbs yourself. So continue on.
Yeah. So I'll walk you through also the idea about the multiplied effects, as we mentioned, because a lot of the time, even people working full time, I remember working at Cisco, and for the most part, I interacted with, let's say, 7 people that I knew, the close team that I was a part of. And then, yes, sometimes we went out of that group to interact with other people in the company. But most of the time, we were thinking it's just us. And the same thing happens if somebody's looking for a job. A lot of the time, they get very lonely and they only think about themselves and they think about their own situation. Or somebody's running a business, and again, they think, I need to do the marketing myself, the sales myself, I need to do the business delivery myself. In all of those scenarios, like at Cisco, there are 70,000 employees. So that basically means I have a 70,000 employee large universe that I can reach out to. The same thing for that job seeker. There are hundreds and hundreds of other people that can be part of that effort. So they need to think about, who can I reach out to, and actually start by giving some help. Like, as we were saying, the whole idea of, is there someone that you can actually be the miracle for today? And start by reaching out and saying, is there something that I can do for you? So when you start by giving, it starts the conversation in a much more positive way, because then you're not coming in with that desperation in mind. You're really coming in from the standpoint of, maybe there's something that I could do for this person. And that starts to generate that conversations.
And the other thing that I think is important is that the messaging that you help people craft is exactly what you can put into the very top part of your LinkedIn profile, which is the hot spot. So that's where people and actually turn on changes alerts at that point, because when you update that section, it'll go out to your entire network, and they will see.
Great point.
How there's like your light bulb, that formula that you're going to help people create. And again, I think we might reiterate again just what that formula is, so someone can kind of plug it in for themselves. But we know that real estate on LinkedIn is so key, and that's a way of helping as well. And then you'd also use this, as you mentioned, Ash, in emails that you're sending out to a friend, or in a phone call you're going to catch up with someone. This is the nugget you keep introducing in a way with, give first, offer first, and then say, this is what I do. I would love it if you know someone at such and such type of company, or if you can keep in mind if you hear of this kind of a problem that arises.
Totally, and we definitely be sharing with people the script and the show notes in terms of, do you know how? And the second point would be, that's exactly where I step in because of my experience. Here's what I do and the reason why. And then the last one is, do you know anyone? So we'll definitely share those blocks. And as to your point, Sue, once they include that in their communications, whether it's email or LinkedIn, it makes a big difference, because then people understand it clearly. And if I take everybody listening in through the rest of the Own It, Win It, Crush It success blueprint, winning it then tells every one of us that we need to have our own personal center of excellence. You need to be the best project manager ever. You need to be the best marketer ever. You need to be the best product manager ever. And I think, luckily, especially in this country, people have very high work ethics. And with the own it, win it, crush it formula, you start thinking about yourself as Tom Peters says, the professional organization of one. I am this single individual that is building an organization, whether again, I'm working full-time, looking for a job, or running my own business. I need to act as that professional who's got a brand, who has a set of services, who has a center of excellence around how they actually do the job and do it so well that it's such a memorable experience when people work with Sue or Kelly or Ash or Sandy or Jim. They do not forget how beautiful that experience was, how trustworthy you are, how reliable you are. And when they want to do the same thing again, your name comes up. They reach out to you again. And that's the crushing it piece where, you know, Jim Collins calls it the flywheel effect. When you own it so well, when you win it so well, then by definition, business starts to come in. People mention your name. They refer business to you. They tell you things about you. So I think one of the things that a lot of us struggle with is we have not really built these multiplier effects, flywheel effect in our work. We basically think I'm going to go somewhere, get a job done and walk out, collect my check and I'm done. But it's the referenceability that is amazingly important. So whatever it is that you're doing now, whether again, you're working and thank goodness you have a full-time job, that's awesome. But I want you to work yourself out of a job in the sense that I want you to say, you know what, from today on, I run my business. If it's to be, it's up to me and it starts with me every single day. Don't wait for that email to that phone call to show up or the text to show up. Just proactively be the one who actually takes the first step. And I think it's that energy that people are going to be a whole lot more be grateful for, especially now, right? I mean, a lot of us are struggling to get the day going. And if somebody becomes that power and that energy that, oh my God, look at Sue, look at Kelly. They are doing something. Despite everything that's going on, they are taking action. And once you're that kind of person, people see, you know what, if we have her working for us, she's so energetic, she's so active, she's so proactive, she gets stuff done, let's call her. You know what, that's the kind of energy we want.
I think you hit on a key point. We also, I know that I tend to be a bit of a perfectionist, not that I'm perfect, but I feel very hard on myself when I'm not. But reading, that means we don't strive for perfection, yet excellence is what we need to strive for. That means it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay, we always call fall forward or fail forward. If you try something, then that's simply that important process. So when you're when you're working and when you're describing what you do, you don't have to be like the best person in the whole wide world on what you do. You just have to be that important combination of excellence, passion, ethics, dependability, and that becomes what people will hire. There are people who are certainly far more talented and far smarter than I am, but what they know is they know that I'll come through for them. And I think that's the thing where it's, don't limit yourself. If you're a job seeker and you feel like, I can't do this, I can't do that, think of the things you can do. And if it's something you don't know, you know how to figure it out. And in fact, companies now want to hire people who don't know what they're doing because they figure they'll train them on the go. So it's kind of like no apologies, no excuses. Own what you do, and if you don't know something, know that you can do it well, and just the way you learned everything else in life.
And also with that, we're talking about this entrepreneurial spirit. Even though we might be employed, we might be consultants, we might be looking for work, if we keep that mentality of that we are our own business, we are our own entity, have that script ready to go, but also we take more responsibility for what we do when we do an offer. And so it's the ownership on that, it's a little bit more exciting to do that. Keep that mentality of this is ours, we can help others, and also keep ourselves moving forward. Too.
Yeah, we're the captains of our ship, and
it's exciting.
And also we're not alone. And I think that's the beauty of what we're seeing during the pandemic is people reaching out to each other, the amazing positive spirit of people who are doing things extraordinarily well and with heart and passion. So, you're not alone as a captain of your ship. There's a whole flotilla of other people who have these great ships. So we're out going out beyond other horizons and we're going to new places and doing new things. So that you do, what Ash, you struck a really key point, is that the responsibility and the honor and the opportunity is on each of our own shoulders. And you don't have to do it alone. I depend on Kelly all the time. I could not do the ship without her. And so that's the other thing too, is that, maybe have someone who's like a good advocate, like you, Ash, you are a coach and mentor to these executives and other people here. And, you either hire someone professionally like Ash, or have a family member or a friend that can help encourage you and go, yes, you're amazing at this, and this is what you do, and help you kind of
That's a
craft
great point.
that script that you have. So
I do say, own it, win it, crush it. And that really is empowering. But there are steps to that too.
Yeah, because it's very difficult because we look for other sources of inspiration and motivation, and a lot of the time it really comes down to us. And that's why the mantra is, if it's to be, it's up to me. We need to remember that. I remember using this with leadership teams at Cisco. This whole idea of it's to me, if it's to be, it's up to me, immediately gives you the idea that, okay, what's the first thing that I could do? And to your point, Sue, who can I reach out to and build a coalition that we may be able to go after an opportunity together? So it doesn't have to be just by myself. So looking for complementary resources around you and activating them and engaging them and sharing with them what your vision is, and really making it exciting for them to be working with you and working on this particular project. That's, people are looking for that feeling of, we're working on something that's amazing. And if you're able to exude that, if you're able to communicate that, I think it's an amazing advantage.
And to that end, I do want to challenge each person who's listening to this video to call Ash. We'll provide the contact information at the end, but take advantage. This time is so precious. And I'm really glad Ashley offered to give a full hour if needed with some people. But I would say at a minimum, maybe a half an hour to try to help define that. But this is the time to seize the moment. In the midst of this pandemic, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and people are actually, we are hearing about people landing jobs, selling homes, all kinds of activity going on in spite of this. And this is the moment where you really need to capture it now and call Ash. Use that opportunity to craft that light bulb moment, that 30-second elevator pitch that'll help people in your network and help you really define what you do and to land that great job or new piece of business.
It's really a good first step to get our messaging in place, to get us set up. And so Ash does make us all feel better, make us feel more empowered.
Yes.
So really, thank you so much. It's great information. We hope we all use it too. Thank you.
Thank you for being our guest today.
It's an amazing time, and it's just calls for amazing creative ideas. So thank you for having me.
Great. Okay, everybody, seize the day. Take care. Bye-bye.